All right. So like I said, my name is Dr. Saliha Afridi. I am a clinical psychologist and the managing director of the LightHouse Arabia. And the LightHouse Arabia, just for you guys to know, because a lot of you guys are within the region, it is a mental health and wellness center in Suqaim, Dubai. And we have, we're one of the largest clinics in the region with mental health clinicians, psychology. We have psychiatry, which is medication management, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy. One of the things that I feel very, very, very super proud of, and we're almost like a social enterprise in that sense, is that we have about 18 support groups that we run monthly, bi-monthly, every week. That serve the community, that are free of charge, that are run by psychologists. So some of the more recent ones is for Black individuals, and then we have who have experienced racism. And we also have one for the Beirut explosion, which we recently launched. And now tonight we have one for single parents, which we recently launched. But we have literally a support group for every different kind of community. And soon we will be having one for individuals who've gone through a breakup, because that seems to be quite a big thing, you know, to cope with when you are living within a community such as ours, or while you're away from your family, etc., as an expat. So I wanted to mention those things. We also have mental health first aid, and mental health first aid is basically learning how to be a first responder. So for example, we have physical first aid. So if I'm choking on something, someone can give me the Heimlich and they learn physical first aid. This is the same thing basically, but for mental health. It's a 10-hour course, 10 to 12-hour course, where you go over all the different diagnoses: depression, anxiety, suicidality, substance abuse, and you learn about all of those different things, and you learn how to respond, because sometimes we just don't know what to say, so we just don't say anything at all, and it ends up being really a really uncomfortable or awkward or just a lost opportunity where we could have supported someone who's struggling. And we already know that we all know someone who is struggling with something. So unless you don't get out much, then you probably know someone who's suffering with some sort of, whether it's burnout, chronic stress, or depression, anxiety, and something a lot more serious. So I just want you to go online, follow the Instagram account, because we keep that super updated. Our calendar is super, super updated on the website. So we're not one of those websites that like don't update for months and months. We're literally on it every day to make sure that it's up to date. So make sure you check those things out, because it is a huge, huge support for the community, and it's something I'm very, very proud of. This is my team, and they are an amazing, amazing team, fully committed to the community. And like I said, we're all licensed by the CDA or the DHA. So we've been around for 9 years, and we've been deeper and deeper into the community since then. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about the healthy habits of the mind and the brain. You guys all wanted to be here because you're like, something is off about my brain. I can't seem to remember things. I'm so stressed out, or I don't have any memories, or I'm not as productive. I'm so distracted, right? All of us are here for some reason or another. And so I want to give you science, hard, like, you know, evidence-based, research basically that says that if you engage in these activities, you will have optimal brain functioning. So this is not rocket science. They've done the math, they've done the science, they've done it all for us, when, you know, and they've actually figured out what actually will have the best impact on your brain and, you know, and your brain functioning and your mental health. So I'm going to give you very, very practical ways to incorporate this into your life, because as you all know, I'm a mother of 4 children. I'm, you know, yelling at my kids in between these talks, and they're all remote learning because I live with the elderly. And, you know, people with underlying conditions. And so I get how stressful it can be to manage your stress, right? So sometimes when we go to some of these talks, we end up feeling more stressed out than less. So I really want to break it down into the tiniest little things you can do in order to actually have optimal brain functioning. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to start off with a quote. And the quote is basically by David Rock. David Rock leads the Neuro Leadership Institute in the United States. And the Neuro Leadership Institute is basically where I'm drawing the science out of, okay? So he said basically that we have entered an era of overwhelm, a time when too many people's mental well-being is being stretched through multitasking, fragmented attention, and information overload. This is something I think all of us can say, that's me. I feel like I'm multitasking. I feel like my attention is in many, many different places. And at the end of the day, I feel like there's smoke coming out of my ears because I've just consumed so much information. A fun fact for you guys, Schmidt, who was the CEO of Google, he said this in 2013, by the way. So I am sure that in the last 6 months, the numbers have been updated. But in 2013 at a conference, he said that in 2 days, the human beings are generating more content and more information, and before social media, all of this stuff. So I'm sure it's like 2 hours. We are generating more information than we did from the dawn of man to 2013. Take dawn of man in 2013 and take, cave drawings and hieroglyphics and, all of these ancient writings and religions and all of this content. And then 2 days, and then 2 days, and then 2 days. So I'm sure that the number is much less now, especially because of COVID. So we are really, really overloaded. And so what can we do in order to give ourselves a sense of balance? What we end up doing, guys, we end up actually engaging in very unhealthy stress management. We end up smoking, we end up overeating or undereating or zoning out in front of, something I have come up with, which is a verb, which is called Netflixing, withdrawing from our family and friends because we just need some space. We are using pills or substances to relax, sleeping too much, sleeping too little, procrastinating, all of these things basically as a way to manage our stress. Now, the thing about these things is it actually works. It actually works in that moment when you're zoned out in front of Netflix. You're not stressed in that moment. However, this is not a sustainable or long-term solution. And in the long run, it actually is doing more harm than good because it actually is feeding that chronic stress inside of us rather than releasing that stress. So this is called stress management. What we want is stress mastering. We want to master our stress, not manage our stress. We want to master our lives, not manage our lives, right? We want to actually feel like alive rather than just managing things from here to there. So how do we do that? Well, the Neuro Leadership came up with basically a healthy mind platter. You know how in the old days where they used to have the food pyramid that you should have this much dairy and this much chicken, meats and this much legumes and this much, etc. Well, this is basically what you need every single day to engage in order to have a healthy mind. If you do not engage in one of these things, your brain is not going to be functioning at optimal. Fact. Now, there are neuroscientists, neuropsychiatrists, biologists, sleep researchers. I mean, they've got psychologists, psychiatrists, all sorts of people working and figuring out what results in optimal brain functioning. They came up with these 7 things. These 7 things are the 7 things that I will be speaking to you guys about and really rooting them deeper and deeper into science. So you guys are convinced that I'm not making this up. So sleep, time in, downtime, playtime, connecting time, focus time, and physical time. Now, every single thing I will say, you guys have heard in one way or another way, but you guys have not heard that this is good for your brain. Yeah, we know physical exercise is good for our body, but do you know that it actually is going to protect you from depression, anxiety, dementia? Do you know that? Right? We need to know that these things are all linked and there's no such thing as mind and body separately. We are one, and if we don't take care of one thing, it actually will impact the other. So I would like to say that all of these things will strengthen brain connections within your brain, but it also, I would also like to say that although these things sound really simple, in the world that we live in today, they are absolutely not easy. So simple does not equal easy. I'm actually going to ask you to do nothing. I'm going to ask you to sit and look out the window and reflect. I'm going to ask you to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. These are things that we just used to do, but we are no longer doing because of the way we are engaged with technology and the way we are engaging with our work. The way we focus is no longer. The attention span is shrinking exponentially by every generation. The way we connect with our friends is no longer. You know, there's always a device in between people. And so what is that doing? And how is that increasing our loneliness? And how does that affect our brain? So I'm going to talk about these things, okay? So guess what? The first thing I will talk to you guys about is sleep. Because anyone who knows anything about me is you can't have more than like a 20-minute conversation without me finding a way to link it back to sleep. And sleep is basically refreshing the mind and body and consolidating memory. And when we give our brain the rest it needs, it consolidates learning, it recovers from experiences of the day, it releases the toxins that we need to release. And it actually will de-risk you from two of the biggest threats in the developed world, which is Alzheimer's and cancer. So basically it will de-risk you from every other disease, but the two biggest concerns that most of us have these days is, am I going to get cancer or am I going to get Alzheimer's/dementia? And that actually could be de-risked by you having a good night's sleep. So just FYI, we are in a catastrophic sleep loss epidemic. Anything less than 7 hours is considered sleep deprivation, and it is more lethal than food deprivation. We can go many, many days without food, but we cannot go many, many, many days without sleep. The best sleep happens between the hours of 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., but I would actually like to extend that from 9 to 5. That's when you are going through all the different cycles of the sleep. I have a 1-hour talk on sleep actually on my YouTube channel. Please watch it if you don't believe me, because I go way, way, way more in detail about this. Sleep is the single most effective thing that you can do for your brain and your body. And Matthew Walker, he wrote a book called Why We Sleep, and I really recommend that you read that book if you are a reader and you want to learn more about that. Sleep is critical. This is, you know, this idea that we need to sleep to rest. There is nothing that is resting in our body when we sleep except our conscious mind. Our cortex is shut down, but our subconscious, the unconscious mind, where dreams are processing, our body is doing everything it needs to do when we actually go to sleep. So, you know, when they used to say that, you know, you get taller when you go to sleep, that's what we used to tell our kids to get them into bed. Well, that actually is true. Our growth hormone kicks in, our body is restoring its homeostatic, you know, our insulin levels, our temperature, all of that is being regulated. Our tissue is being repaired. You will never find an athlete who is not obsessed about their sleep. You will never, ever find an athlete who is not like, I need to go to bed right now. I need 12 hours of this, you know. And so you will have tissue repair happening at this time. Sleep is absolutely linked to our immunity. 75% drop in our immunity and our natural killer cells if we get less than 5 hours of sleep a night. 70% of drop in our natural killer cells. So think about that. One night, 5 hours, and your immunity has been compromised by 70%. Something that is really, really important, which is the glymphatic system, which not many people know about, which is basically like a car wash for your brain. It actually, there's a sticky substance called beta amyloid that actually builds up in your brain during the day. And when you go to bed and you go into the deep restorative sleep, there's washing that happens, and the glymphatic system kicks on and it cleans up the brain. It takes out the toxins and it flushes it down your spinal cord and through the spinal liquid, and it actually cleans your body out. So there's a difference between the lymphatic system and the glymphatic system. The glymphatic system will only be activated in deep sleep. So if you are not getting this good quality restorative sleep, you are not activating your glymphatic system, and that is actually directly linked to Alzheimer's. So there has been a direct link to the lack of brain sort of cleaning up that's happening and to Alzheimer's. So the glymphatic system only turns on when you are in deep restorative sleep. Emotional regulation is very much linked to your sleep. If you do not get 6 hours, if you get 6 hours or less of sleep, you are actually 60% more activated the next day than if you were to get deep restorative sleep, 7 to 8 hours. Your learning is compromised. We have something called the hippocampus, which is basically like a USB of the brain. When you are not getting the 7 to 8 hours of sleep, that USB is clogged up and the memory is full, because you need to actually have that USB consolidate its memory in deep sleep, and it happens in deep sleep. And that empties out the USB and you're ready to learn the next day. So you take that USB in the night, it's actually consolidating the learning and the memory, but it also is taking all the hippocampus's, memories and putting it in the long-term memory, releasing that USB hippocampus for the next day learning. So when you can't focus and you can't concentrate and you are feeling distracted, guess what? It probably is because your sleep is compromised. And so focusing on that sleep is actually going to really help you become more and more alert, more and more focused, more and more able to concentrate. So the lack of sleep is actually linked to all sorts of issues, guys: obesity, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, Alzheimer's, emotional dysregulation, poor mental health. There's not a single mental health disorder, mental illness, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, name it, that doesn't have a poor sleep component linked to it. And so we really want to focus on that. Depression that is associated with long working hours is actually not due to the workload. It actually is because our sleep is compromised. And if you are 45 or older and you get less than 6 hours of sleep, you are 200%, so 2 times more likely to get a heart attack or a stroke, because your body is not doing what it needs to do to recover. So sleep, guys. And I will tell you about how you can get better sleep towards the end. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is playtime. Now, remember, I'm linking everything to great brain functioning. So when you allow the brain to be creative and spontaneous and playful and engage in novel activities, that actually creates space in the brain in order for you to actually be able to deal with stress differently. So play is probably equally important as the basic drivers of sleep, rest, and food. Now, let me tell you why that is important. So we have neural pathways in our brain, okay? And you know people, and maybe you're one of those people, that the older we get, the more rigid we get. I only want one hairdresser. I only want to go to the one nail person. I only want to go to this hotel. I want to only stay in this way, and I'm only going to go to this mall, and I'm only going to go to this time. That's because those neural pathways, they're basically little paths in our brain. And whatever you fire together, wires together, and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And that actually makes us very, very rigid. The more rigid you are, the more likely you are to get shocked when there is uncertainty. Hello, 2020. The more likely you are to break when there is any type of ask of you that is asking you to innovate or adapt. So play actually keeps us very flexible. The same thing that when I play hide and seek with my children and they, jump out from behind the stairs and it scares me, a neural pathway in my brain is being exercised that says, oh my gosh, I could have a whole new project land on my lap on Monday that is due on Thursday. It's the same pathway of spontaneity, of adaptability, about mastering changing environments. You know, I am not a very playful person. You know, my idea of play is to, like, you know, do a 3,000 piece puzzle with my children, or to play chess, but play where you don't know what's going to happen next. So I'm not talking about football or basketball or any of these board games. I'm talking where you don't know what's going to happen next. So I didn't know how to play, but I actually, attended a conference for a, you know, a Fortune 100 company where they had all their senior partners, and they had the Nudstrup, the CEO of Lego, and he told them, now look under your seat, and there were little packets of Legos, and there's all these consultants sitting there, and they're looking at this packet and they're thinking, what am I supposed to make from this? Where are the rules? What am I supposed to draw? But that's not how Lego was created. You know, Lego became this thing where they have all these rules, but Lego was just build whatever you want. Build and create and innovate. And so what he did was he told them to take it out, and then they started making things. And he said, just do whatever, there's no rules. And then you saw the laughing and the giggling and the duck and the house and the girl and the boy and the dog all coming out of these Lego pieces. And that's what I mean by playful, where you are developing flexible emotional responses based off of these wires in your brain that you are firing due to playful activity. It keeps the brain agile, and it allows it to expand beyond what is familiar and build new connections in the brain. And it doesn't make you rigid as you get older. So when your boss comes to you on Monday and says, hey, 4 o'clock Monday, I need this back by Wednesday morning, 8 a.m., you don't break as a result of that. You innovate as a result of that. You stay creative because neural pathways in your brain get that kind of activity. So I bought a huge trampoline, and I just bounce around in it. And pre-COVID days, I actually used to go to the trampoline park with my children. And this is where I broke my ankle one time. And I don't know if you guys know, but trampoline injuries are the #1 reason people go to ERs. So I became a statistic in that moment, but I advise you to be very, very safe in trampoline parks. But it is one of those things that you go up and you don't know where you're gonna land. And so this trapezing and trampolining and this kind of stuff, even actually playing in the ocean or the sea where you actually have waves and they knock you over and you don't know what's gonna happen and where you're gonna stand, that kind of stuff is actually very, very good for the brain. It keeps it young, it keeps it fresh, it keeps it agile, okay? The third thing that I'm gonna tell you guys about is downtime. This is disconnecting for integration and insight. When we are awake, non-focused, without any specific goal, and we let our mind wander, and we simply sort of relax, it allows our brain to recharge. Now, all of you guys have actually experienced something like this, right? Where you have been talking to someone, and then all of a sudden, you sort of glaze over, and then your eyes are somewhere in the back, and you actually don't know, and then you sort of come back. That's called the default neural network. That's when your brain is saying reboot, recharge. And so sometimes our brain is just so overloaded that we zone out. That zone out is precisely what I'm talking about. We need to zone out. And daydreaming is underrated. I really feel that people need to do more daydreaming. So intentionally having no intention is basically downtime. Think about it. When was the last time you did nothing? Yeah, we wake up, there's a phone, what time is it? As soon as we open the phone, there's like 75 messages and we are in our day. Right? And then we go in the bathroom and we listen to a podcast. When we're walking, we're listening to music. When we are, driving, we're talking to our mother. When we're in the grocery store, we're probably talking to someone else or WhatsApping with 7 other people. When was the last time you literally did nothing? And when I did this talk once, it actually said, someone asked me, like, how do you do nothing? And I'm not talking about meditation. I'm not talking about getting massages. I'm not talking about, getting your nails done. I'm talking about nothing. And nothing is actually what I'm really good at. I'm really good at doing nothing. I've mastered the art of doing nothing, which is basically you grab your tea and you look out the window and you watch the trees, or you look at a candle flame and you let yourself sort of zone out into the flame. You guys have all been around bonfires, or maybe you've been around fireplaces where you're just hypnotic. Right? You zone out. You're literally not thinking about anything, but you are awake. And there is this default neural network happening at that time. Now, there's a lot of people who feel that they have lost touch with who they are. They don't know who they are anymore. They don't know how to connect with themselves anymore. And that is precisely because we don't have enough downtime in our world, in our life anymore. The default neural network is actually engaged. It's the neurological basis of the self. This is where we reflect about ourselves, where we make memories, where we think about things, where things pop up in our head. This is where we're thinking about others. And this is where we're, you know, when you stand up to pray, for those of you guys who, or you sit down to pray, or you sit down to meditate and you close your eyes, and this is where you're doing nothing, right? And all of a sudden, all these thoughts show up. That's basically your default neural network. And that's where you actually are engaged in this sort of deep way of connecting with yourself. And so what you want to do is you want to make space for that. Now, downtime actually helps the brain reboot, recharge. It is also very good for problem solving. All these aha moments happen during downtime. You make better decisions as a result of that, and you have increased insight about yourself and about other people. So whenever you're having a hard problem, I say write down everything on a piece of paper, struggle with it a little bit, gather all the facts, and then go away. Take a nap, you know, go take a shower, you know, go for a walk, and don't think about your problem. And then where you are not actually engaged in some sort of social media, WhatsApp, etc., the aha moment will happen. How many times have you had an aha moment in the shower? The aha moments happen when there is downtime. And most often this theta waves downtime actually happens in the shower, or right before we go to bed, or right as we are waking up. We have this moment. And so we want to create more of those moments in our day. The next thing I want to talk about is time in. Now, this is actually when I'm going to ask you to meditate. This is where you're actually reflecting and attuning and engaging with yourself. When you quietly engage with your internal life, you focused on your sensations, what's happening in my body, the images that I'm having in my mind, the feelings that I'm experiencing, the thoughts that are coming up for me. This is called time in. And it actually helps the brain integrate. Right brain and left brain. Remember, we're talking about optimal brain functioning, but it also is very good for your mental health as well. Now, time in is where you are making a very particular kind of focused attention on your inner life of the here and now. Journaling is one of those things where you're actually engaging with your thoughts. It can be a very meditative, reflective experience. You're focused on your interior world, which grows the integrative fibers of the brain. We are all too focused on the outside world. Everything we do all day long is about something that is happening on our phone, or something asking of us, or something that we're looking at other people's world. We don't spend enough time in. And maybe meditation was like one of these bougie things you did when in you know, maybe 6-7 years ago. But in the world that is so infused with social media and external stimuli, we have to be deliberate about our practice of meditation. We have to be deliberate about our practice of engaging with ourselves. And of course, turning off and downtime and rebooting. We have to be deliberate about these practices. So this is not just, oh, go relax and get a massage. This is about really engaging with your internal world and connecting with your values. I put a story up yesterday about a values inventory. Swipe up on that story because it takes you to a website where you can actually do a values inventory And then you can actually figure out what your values are and then live according to that and reflect. Am I living according to that? How kind am I? How courageous am I? How giving am I? How generous am I? How compassionate am I? You start to actually reflect on some of these things. Right now, we're all on autopilot and living quite unconsciously. And then we're worried why we're so feeling groundless. We feel so anxious because we don't have a footing, because we're not anchored in our values. We're not anchored in a discipline. We're not anchored in our sense of self. The more you are anchored in that sense of self, the less these things and these waves of change are going to impact you. And the less you are going to feel vulnerable to things like anxiety and depression, et cetera, et cetera. Connection to self and others is going to be very critical. I want you to go on YouTube and I want you to look for a guided meditation by Dan Siegel. And he takes you through this wheel of awareness. Now, if you look on this part of the, I don't know which one, look on this corner of the wheel of awareness, where it starts with the first 5 senses. The first 5 senses is where you actually are engaging with, what am I touching? What am I feeling? So this is basically the essence of mindfulness. Engage the 5 senses. When I tell my children we're going to meditate for 1 hour, I mean, yeah, right. Not 1 hour. Yeah, right. In another dimension, maybe. When I say we're going to meditate for 1 minute, I actually don't say meditate. I say we're all going to do awareness training for 1 minute. And okay, tell me what you're smelling. So we're engaged with our sense. Then tell me what you're touching. Tell me what you're hearing. Tell me what you're seeing. And that basically is the essence of mindfulness. Most often we try to anchor ourselves in our breath, okay? Then he moves to the 6th sense, which is the interior of your body. How are my kidneys? How is my liver? How is my, adrenal glands? How is my heart? How is my brain? You know, when you start to connect with this part of yourself, you actually will become more and more integrated in your body. Then when you eat something wrong, you will know exactly, oh, this was not right for my stomach. This was not, my kidneys are probably suffering right now because I'm dehydrated, or I need to detox my liver. You will actually start to feel it in your body when you attune to your body again and again and again. Remember, guys, I'm saying these are daily practices. So do this for 1 minute, do this for 3 minutes, but this is something you're going to have to do every single day. Then you move into the mental activities. What's happening in your brain? You want to know what's happening in your brain? Just close your eyes and focus on your breath, and all sorts of thoughts will show up. Oh, I'm thinking about my mother. I'm thinking about work. Oh, I had to book that party. Oh, what are my kids doing? All of that stuff is mental activities. And then you say, what is taking up the biggest mind share right now? For me, my biggest mind share is I need to get these kids adjusted to a whole school year of being at home. So that's like taking the biggest mind share for me right now. And then I'm thinking about other things that are coming up in October. Okay, so this is now me engaging to my mental activities. Then you actually connect to the 8th sense. There's a typo there, not height sense, but 8th sense. And that is interconnectedness, where you connect to your room, you connect to your home, you connect to Sukaim, you connect to your city, you connect to your region. And there's an expansiveness that happens in the brain. Remember, guys, this is all about brain functioning. This is about us having a healthy, functioning brain that is connected to life. And this is one of those things you do where you have this interconnectedness, which expands the brain. It's a very expansive experience for the brain and for your senses. So that's what you want to do for that. The next thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is connecting time. This is one of the things that is most compromised right now. And no, it doesn't have to do with the fact that you are living alone. And no, it doesn't have to do with the fact that you're stuck in with your family for the last 6 months. It actually is way deeper than that. Connection goes way deeper than living with another person or not living with another person. There is something healing that happens in a relationship where a person can see you. You could be sitting in your house and I could be sitting on Zoom and I see you and you feel seen by another person, or you feel like you saw another person. And that deep connection, of course, we need that energetically. So I'm not saying that Zoom can solve all our problems, but I am saying that just because you live alone doesn't mean that you are going to be less disconnected. And just because you live with people doesn't mean that you're guaranteed this one check done. Because when we connect to people, ideally in person, richly activating the brain's social circuits, that's what starts to happen. Now there's a study done, and I really love this study, so I'm going to tell you, so bear with me, sit back a little bit. There's a study done by Harvard. It was one of the longest study done to date, and I think it was about 75-ish years. And they followed these men, because that's what they did back then. They didn't have women as part of the study, which 75, 80 years ago, of inner city Boston and Harvard undergrad. Okay, and they followed, and then there was about roughly 400 people in each group, and inner city Boston and undergrad Harvard, and they followed these men through life, and they asked the question, what makes people happy? Okay, that's what we're trying to figure out. What makes people happy? They followed these men. They figured out how much, you know, every 25 years, they did surveys and inventories and phone calls and subjective, objective type of detail-oriented inventories. And they found year after year, after decade, that, you know, once they've measured age, were you married? Did you have children? What was your job status? Did you have income? Were you, you know, on food stamps? All of these questions that we think that, oh, if I have money, if I'm married, if I have a big house, if I, you know, have 5 children, or if I have no children, whatever we associate with happiness, they thought this is what makes people happy. So let's just ask people. Again, when they controlled again and again and again, they found that the most powerful measure of happiness was social support and people who had intimate and intimate confiding relationships with other people. Notice I didn't say were they married. Notice I didn't say did they have children. Notice I didn't say did they have grandchildren. But did they have those people in their life that they felt that they were connected to intimately, that I could trust you with, that you're my person? And it could be your friend, it could be your coach, it could be your teacher, it could be your colleague, it could be anybody. But were you my person when I was not feeling like you know, when I needed to be seen? You know, in this avatar, when they say, I see you, like that kind of person. And so what they found is that when you have social support, it mitigates the effects of stress. And we know that stress is like poison for the brain, right? We know it's poison for the body when you are in chronic stress. A little bit of stress where you're running for 20 minutes, not so bad. 20 days, now we're moving into a space where this is not so good. So what it does is it actually mitigates and moderates and reduces the pressure, the strain of stress. So what does that look like? Someone calls me and says, bad news, ... right? They give me some bad news. I pick up the phone, I hang up the phone, and I call my husband. Oh my God, this just happened, and then this just happened. What happens inside of the body and the mind is fascinating, because it literally takes the pressure and the stress and divides it by 2. And if I have 3 people, it divides it by 3. And if I call my mother, it divides it by 4. And if I have a whole community, it divides it. And I no longer am carrying that. So, you know, when they say that I will carry the load with you, I will carry your weight with you, it literally feels like that to the brain and to the body. Imagine. Right? So feeling isolated can actually disrupt your sleep. It raises your blood pressure. It weakens your immunity, and it increases depression. It lowers well-being. And so we need to focus our attention on connection, guys. And guess what's getting in the way of that? What is getting in the way of that is this thing. Because there was a study done by Cheryl Turkle. And Cheryl Turkle was like, you know, AI Magazine of the Year. She's MIT researcher. And she said that, you know, that they did studies where they put a phone in between 2 people and they asked them to have a conversation. And they said, you know, that quality of that conversation dropped significantly. Significantly is where it actually makes a significant impact on that conversation. And now we say, no, but I don't put my phone facing up. I put my phone facing down. It doesn't matter. If there's a phone in your periphery, you will actually have a lower quality connection in that moment. So when you are actually spending time with your children, spend time with your children, put your phone away. Have moments that are sacred. Have spaces that are sacred. Have experiences that are sacred where you actually get together with friends and everybody puts their phone away. You know what? We're not going to clock this one. We're not going to post about this one. We're just going to connect with each other. We're just going to have game night and no one's going to know about it except us. How's that for a change, right? And so this is what I mean by connecting. Really taking those moments that when we are together, we're really together. So some of those sacred moments in my day could actually be when I'm sitting with my children, and dinner time is like no tech time. There's literally zero tech. I don't care how beautiful that dish looks or how amazing that pizza is. There is no tech at dinner. This is where we come together and we actually are going to be together. Same thing when we are sitting with friends. Put it away under the table, in your purse, etc. The next thing is physical time. I already told you guys about how brain, exercise is good for the body, but it's really actually about improving the brain's plasticity, and it strengthens the brain in many ways. It enhances your learning and memory. It improves the executive functioning, which is our impulse control, our ability to reason, our ability to think and plan ahead, our ability to manage our stress, our ability to regulate our emotions, all of that of our brain. It reduces stress, it decreases anxiety, it decreases depression, and stress has and exercise has been linked to that. There's a book called Spark by Rati. I might actually post about this book next on my Instagram channel. So, but he actually is a Harvard scientist who's linked it literally to ADHD. And if you actually give individuals a 30-minute regimen of exercise every day or medication for anxiety, you're going to see the same exact results. So exercise can actually be seen as a treatment for ADHD, for anxiety, for depression, because you're literally releasing those endorphins in your body, which are basically like, a happy chemical in your brain. You increase your serotonin, your dopamine, your endorphins, all of that is actually moving around in your brain. And so that actually is so good for your brain, and it protects the brain from damage, as well as things like dementia. Not going to talk too much about this one because I want to have time for questions. And then the last thing I want to talk about is focus time. Now, this is something that obviously is very much compromised, but when we focus our attention on something, we are able to refocus efficiently and effectively when we deep dive into something, and we can actually engage in mastery and completion, which is something that we are not feeling these days. And sustaining attention is basically ability of self-control. If you can focus, it basically is like a superpower these days. Most of us are like, oh, let me actually work on this presentation. Oh, let me look this word up in dictionary. What does that mean? And then the next thing, the dictionary. Oh, wait, I needed to get something from Amazon. Okay, let me just get on Amazon. Oh, wait, what? The next thing you know, you're like, 2 hours in and you've bought like 4 books and 3 pairs of shoes and like, a Kindle and you were just working on a presentation. And this is literally how our brain moves around. It's called monkey mind. It's like a real thing, guys. And there was a book, and it's a very long, old book. It's called In Shallow Waters. And in Shallow Waters, he talks about how the internet literally is changing the wiring of our brain. Our brains are rewired differently as a result of the internet, because that's what happens. We click on a link, 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 and the next thing you know, you've lost completely track of what you're doing. And now the internet plus social media, which has a very highly addictive dopamine release, you are battling, a Goliath basically. And so what happens is that when we focus and we make some time for, not being distracted, we actually don't feel as overwhelmed. We don't feel incomplete. We don't feel we're draining ourselves from multitasking. And there's no such thing as multitasking, by the way. It impairs performance period, because there's a spotlight in your brain, and the brain spotlight goes like this. I'm looking at you, I'm looking at my paper, I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at you, and it's moving so fast that it just looks like I'm being a smooth operator here by multitasking. There's no such thing as the multitasking. The brain has one spotlight, guys, and that spotlight moves very, very fast for some people, and it moves very, very slow for some people. And so just because you have a fast operator does not mean that you are not multitasking or that you are a good multitasker. You're basically draining your brain of energy. And that's why moms usually by like 6 p.m. we're like finished, because we've been multitasking all day. But what if you did focus on one thing at a time and just focused on that, check, done. Focus on that, check, done. Focus on that, check, done. And the best time to focus is usually 2 hours after you wake up, and that's, and prior to 1 p.m. That's when your brain has the highest amount of analytical energy. And then you get your second wind around 4 p.m., which is more of a creative energy. If you want to know more about how do you really maximize your brain's potential, there's a book called When. When is about maximizing your brain's potential. There's a reason why there's no surgeries like at 3 p.m. because our brain just goes into a natural dip due to our circadian rhythm, and we're not as focused. So maximize your focus prior to noon, and then your creative energy after 4 and 7. Usually we get our second wind. So that's what you want to do. And then lastly, guys, we want to spend some time in our week with investing in ourselves. We need to build a mental health toolbox. We need to spend 30 minutes a day where we're reading or engaging. You know, you can watch my YouTube or you can watch my Instagram, but something that is feeding our learning about how to stay healthy in this world that we're living in today. And so this is a slide you want to take a picture of. So I gave you all of these things that you should do, and I want to now talk about how you can maximize it. And I'm just going to go quickly through this. Don't read on blue screens without a blue light screen protector. And I tell you where to get your blue light screen protector on my Instagram 2 hours before sleeping. However, even with the blue light screen protector, avoid blue lights. You know, go back to the old school books, read on books, magazines before you go to bed, because you're still quite exhausted when you do that. Drink things like chamomile tea. Keep your phone away from your hand's reach, because you're going to be blinking and, you know, all of these things all night long. And you just don't want that kind of Wi-Fi circuitry around your head anyways. You want to have aromatherapy. So I always keep these things next to my desk. This is when I want to stay calm. This is when I want to wake up. And I spray these kinds of things around me, because our senses are absolutely going to help us relax or stay alert. Engage in warm baths before you go to bed. Keep your temperature super cool, and have MagVita, magnesium plus B6. Now, I tell way more than this in my sleep talk on YouTube. So please go watch that if you want to know how to get your sleep on. If I were to look at all of these 7 things, sleep is the number one thing I will say. Sleep is literally at the base of anything else that you will do. If your sleep is compromised, nothing else makes sense. If your sleep is compromised, you will not be playful. You will not be, you will be zoned out, but for other reasons. You will not be able to engage with yourself and have reflective practice, or engage with your friends, or exercise, or focus, or learn. So you want to really get the sleep under control, and then you want to do anything else. For playtime, be around children, be around pets. They're actually very playful, but make sure that it's unstructured. Hide and seek is a great thing. Trampoline parks, buying a trampoline for your garden if you have one, are all great ways for you to still engage in that playful activity and laugh and giggle and, and take the other route home. So just build new different neural pathways in your brain for the unexpected. Take the long way home, take the scenic route home, get stuck in traffic. Cope with all of those things, because when you do that, you're training your brain to cope with other kinds of stress as well. Downtime, this is when you do nothing. Remember? So turn off your phone. We have this weird thing that happens with our brain that when we turn off our phone, a part of our brain shuts off too. It's like this umbilical cord. So turn off your phone and just see what happens inside of you. You'll feel very, very anxious. What's going on? What am I? Control that. So if you can't turn off your phone for long periods of time, turn it off for 10 minutes, or turn it off for 2 hours, or turn it off for the first 4 hours of the day, and then engage with your phone once you've done your emails and things like that. But you can do your emails on your computer, but you don't need to be on social media and on WhatsApp and all of these other things that are happening. Don't look at your phones while you wait. That's another way. So this is something that I do when I drive. I don't look at my phone. So if I'm waiting at a red light, I'm just looking at a red light. I'm just zoned out. I'm looking at the traffic. I'm seeing people drive by. All of that is happening. That literally is downtime. So find a way to do more of that. Look out the window and look at the trees or the buildings or the people walking underneath your building, just whatever's outside, and let your brain just sort of zone out and daydream. You can also look at a bonfire or a flame or a candle. Sit on the beach and watch the waves. There's something very hypnotic about being on the beach, and that's because our brain waves mimic the sea actually. Time in is where you engage in journal writing. I'm a big fan of therapy. I have 2 hours of therapy plus supervision plus consultation, actually 3 hours of therapy a week on different projects that I'm working on inside of myself. But this is where I really connect to my past, my present, my future. And that actually gives me a sense of being in control and grounded in myself. Do the wheel of awareness that I mentioned to you guys. Google it. It's on YouTube. Spend time in nature without your phone. No one needs to know how beautiful that is. Just be there alone. There is such a thing as ecotherapy too. And being in nature actually engages our self-reflection. For connecting time, have a cell phone stack. When you do get together with your friends in a COVID friendly way, put all your phones in a bag or in a stack at the front of the door. And then when whoever goes for the phone buys dessert next time or buys dinner or whatever. So have a cell phone stack where you do not engage with that. Schedule times to be with friends without technology. Like I said, it can actually become a thing where we're just getting together, but leave your phone in the car and let's just see what happens to us without our phones. Board games are a great way to do that. And that's actually going to really, really be helpful in just game night and laughing and joking and connecting and seeing each other. But schedule time to be with each other and have deep, meaningful conversations with the people in your life where you are asking deep questions rather than, what their most recent, Instagram find was. Physical time, 3 times 3 is most important. Get a Fitbit. I don't get paid to say this, but ever since COVID happened, I have not worn any of my watches. This is what I've been living with, but it actually will help you keep track. What you don't measure, you cannot change. Sleep, Fitbit will measure your sleep-ish, right? It'll give you some idea of what that was. It's not fully accurate, but it's good enough. And you want to get at least 10,000 steps a day, just because it's just good to keep moving. 20 minutes of walking prior to starting your day is actually lights up your brain like a Christmas tree and you're ready to roll. So even 20 minutes a day of walking briskly is going to be very good for your brain. For focus time, turn off your notifications. I'll say it again. Turn off your notifications. We are like Pavlov dogs. Ding, and we check our phone. Ding, and we check our phone. And rather than us being in control of when I will check my WhatsApp, I'm literally, imagine someone, while you're working and someone enters a door and someone enters a door and someone enters, you would lose your mind. But that's literally what's happening. There are 15 people showing up at your door every 30 seconds when you're trying to focus. Would you not lock your door? You would lock your door. So turn off your notifications and you will see. Well, I remember when I first turned off my notification, I felt like, doesn't anyone love me anymore? How come no one's messaging me? But I was so focused. I was able to get things done. And then I checked my WhatsApp, and then I spent 15 minutes answering to everybody. And then I would spend my 30 minutes on my screen. And then I would spend, 30 minutes on social media. And then I would focus. So you can schedule things, but you're doing one thing at a time. Attention training is a great way to do that, where you start to time yourself and say, how long can I go without being distracted? And that is where you focus. And then you say, I'm going to go 7 minutes today. And then I'm going to go 8 minutes next week. And then I'm going to go 9 minutes. So you literally are building a muscle. It literally is a muscle in your brain, guys. Focus is a muscle. You can build it. You can actually build your attention muscle. Rigidly schedule your day so you can actually stay focused. Your phone calls, your emails, your social media, you're hanging out with your friends, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Attention training can also look like working with puzzles or playing chess. I don't know if any of you have played chess, but my brain actually hurts when I'm actually playing chess. And so that actually is training your brain to stay on the board. There ain't nothing you can think about when you actually are on there. And then I put investing time. So much of our energy goes into managing anxiety and managing stress and managing. So learn these skills, guys. They're skills. No one is born with this stuff. So if anxiety is an issue for you, focus on that and learn something about anxiety management every single day. If stress is an issue for you, learn about stress management. If parenting is an issue for you, learn about parenting. That way you're not draining your brain or actually injecting all that cortisol and adrenaline because you're so unskilled in that, right? That's like trying to ask you to drive when you've never driven before, or you've driven only 4 times and then you hit Sheikh Zayed Road. You're going to be stressed out. So you need to learn these skills and practice and practice and practice. And so this is what my schedule looks like. And my schedule actually doesn't look like this anymore, but yeah, I'm just trying to give you an idea of what it could actually look like. So these gold lines that you see are these 5-minute, 10-minute breaks that I might have. This is where you go to the gym or exercise in the morning, first thing, because that's when it's most effective and it's best for you, is to do it first thing in the morning. And then you work on a 45-10, 45-10 type of sort of increment with 5 minutes sort of zoning out. Then you have downtime before you transition back into your day. You might have therapy, you might have journaling, you might have learning. You schedule in your social time, you schedule in calling in people that you want to connect with, you go to the beach, you go do these things. So everything, if it's not in the schedule, it will not happen. I promise you. I promise you that if you do not schedule something in to your day on your calendar, it will not happen, because something else will whisk you away and you will probably end up wasting most of your day on doing mindless tasks. So make these things a priority and actually do them at that time. You can even schedule in turn off phone time, do nothing time. So like on Friday mornings, like no one better talk to me before the call of prayer, because I am not talking to anyone at that time. And then I'm going to be fully on with my family. And then there's lunch, and then there's, reading. And so there's all sorts of things. If you see my schedule, there's not a single hour that is not scheduled. And I will actually write do nothing. And people say, well, it doesn't allow for spontaneity. Be spontaneous in that hour where you're doing nothing. So you actually schedule the spontaneity. And, social time is spontaneous, and all of these things can be spontaneous, but you actually have to make the time to engage in these 7+1 activities that I am recommending and that the Neuro Leadership Institute is recommending. So that was 1 whole hour. And now I'm going to take some questions for you guys. For those of you who have to log off, I'm actually, I wanted to show you guys a video. I'll show you guys the video at the end. But for those of you who have to log off, I want to mention 3 things to you guys. At LightHouse Arabia on Instagram or Facebook, at Dr. Saliha Afridi on LinkedIn, Instagram. Instagram is my main portal which I engage with. And then at Smart Heart Board Game is actually our parenting portal, where we put in a whole lot of resources for parenting, because that is my sort of another love affair that I have with parenting. I ended up doing my dissertation in parenting and things like that. So it's not just about having 4 children, it's also about learning about parenting. And so those are the 3 Instagram channels or Facebook or all of these other channels that I would recommend. And YouTube is also one of them, where I do post a lot of different videos that don't go on to Instagram. All right, so I am now going to answer some questions. So I am actually reading questions, so I'm not zoning out right now. So let's see. Let's see if I can answer some of these questions. Like I said, if I don't get to your question, guys, because there's quite a lot of questions here, please make sure you direct message me, and I would be very, very happy to respond. If you asked a question that I have already answered, if you could please go back and remove it, because there's a lot of questions on here and I want to make sure. So when someone said, when you said 7 plus 1, so this is 7 plus 1, because I mentioned to you guys 7 things that you need to do, right? So there's sleep time, there is play time, downtime, time in, connecting time, physical time, and focus time. And then I added investing in your self-development, which is the plus 1, where you are spending time every single week learning something, teaching yourself something about yourself, about your needs, a skill that you're trying to develop. So that's what I mean by 7 plus 1. So I've answered that. I said, if someone says, if you could only focus on 3 or 4, which one would you begin with? So I already said there needs to be sleep, number 1, number 2, number 3. That's sleep. So number 4, I would actually focus on connecting time, because social support is considered to be the biggest stress mitigator than any other thing. So you want to actually engage in connecting time. And then if I were to pick another one, it would actually be where you are engaging in downtime and time in. Downtime is where you are doing nothing. You're letting your brain wander. Let your brain wander, guys. It's okay if you don't listen to a podcast while you walk. It's okay if you shower and you don't have something playing in the background. Let your brain just wander. And that would be very, very important. And then time in, because I feel people are losing a sense of who they are, a sense of self, a sense of their memories, a sense of their values. All of that exists inside of you. It is not in a book somewhere or in a talk somewhere. So you really need to spend some time connecting with yourself. So time in would be another one of those things that I would really recommend. Okay. The values inventory, please go on my stories. And on my stories, it's actually on Instagram, it's a swipe up, and it actually will take you to the values inventory. When someone says, how do we relax if we know we have to catch up on work? You actually make a time for catch up on work, and then you make a time for relax. And I promise you that the work you will do will end up being done a whole lot faster if you are actually, exercising and rested and engaging in, things that are actually playful and fun. You will actually have less, it will require less time for you to actually get your work done, because your brain will be fully charged. When your brain is not fully charged, it takes you longer. So if you I would recommend that if you have something due at 7 in the morning, go to bed at 10. Take all those things that I told you about, because I actually have an Instagram story on sleep. Please go look at that Instagram story, because I recommend vitamins. I recommend the blue light screen protector. I recommend where you can buy all of these things, and I'm not endorsed by any of these people, so it's not an ad. This is just something that I have spent years perfecting, and so I really recommend actually engaging in those activities where you can perfect your sleep, and then you will be fully charged. And then wake up at 5 in the morning. In those 2 hours before 7 a.m., you will get a whole lot more done than if you were to stay up from 10 p.m. to midnight. So you just are a lot more charged on. So it's not even about working harder, it's about working smarter many times. And it is about working when you are rested. How should we make time for all 7 throughout the week? So I actually showed you guys this calendar. This is how you do it. You schedule it in, okay? So that's how we make time for it. And you want to put in Netflix, you can put Netflix in here, but it needs to be scheduled in. If you don't schedule it in, guess what? You're going to move into the vortex of Netflix, and 7 hours later, you're going to come back out. And I promise you guys, I swear I've scheduled in like marathons on a Friday where I don't want to do anything. I just want to zone out in front of the television, and that's okay. But as long as you schedule it in. This whole idea of losing ourselves in social media and 3 hours later we come back out, not okay. This whole hour of like where, you know, did you know 70% of all videos that are watched on YouTube are through recommended watching? So I go in for one thing and the next 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 thing. And then 5 hours later, I come out of YouTube. Not okay. Because there's other things you could be doing at that time, which are equally important as learning. So you need to learn, schedule it in, but then you need time to go zone out and then allow your brain to process and digest all that. It's not going to happen if you just sit in front of a screen all day long. So when someone says Netflix, is that doing nothing? Absolutely not. Netflix is not doing nothing. Netflix is just a entertainment. That is not part of the 7 that I told you guys about. It actually is something else which can go amongst all these other times. Netflix is entertaining yourself. These 7 habits, actually doing nothing, is where literally you do nothing, guys. Imagine a kid while the teacher is talking and they're zoned out looking at the window. That's doing nothing. Imagine when you're taking a shower and your brain is just sort of wandering places. That's doing nothing. When you're in a bathtub and you're taking a bath and you're not reading anything and you're not listening to anything and you're not looking at anything and you're just watching the bubbles, that's doing nothing. So that's doing nothing, where you're literally doing nothing. And I know this is a really hard concept to understand, but just do yourself a favor and just look at a candle flame. And just look at a candle flame while you are drinking your tea, and that is doing nothing. So someone, someone says, I would like to say, if we activate the blue filter on our mobile tablets, does it hurt? I think only Samsung has the blue light screen protector, but I don't think the iPhone does. But I am just super paranoid as a person, and so I have all kinds of screen protectors, because what the blue light does is it doesn't allow the melatonin to release in your body. And if the melatonin is not releasing, you're not going into that deep restorative sleep where the lymphatic system turns on, and this is what leads to all sorts of issues. So just take all precautions necessary. Even if it says it has a blue light filter, I would just put on another filter or wear the blue light glasses while I'm reading, or I would just avoid technology altogether before going to bed if you can. The Kindle, which looks like it's from like 1952, that actually does not have blue light. That's why it looks like it's from 1952. And so you want to use the Kindle if you want, because it doesn't have the blue light or any type of light. It's just a book, which you don't have to walk around with a book. But yeah, bring back books, actually. Yes, the book was called Shallow Waters. You guys can look that up. It's Shallow Waters, and there's another book called Rewired. Video games is not playtime at all. Anything that has a rule, anything that has something you have to do is not considered playtime. Chess is not playtime. Football is not playtime. Tennis is not playtime. Nothing where you know how this might turn out is playtime. Spontaneity is playtime. Being around children where you don't know what they're going to come up with next is playtime. Like I said, trampoline or trapezing, or where, you know, someone recommended where you make a dance mix where different kinds of music show up and you're dancing, and then all of a sudden you know, opera shows up, and then you're dancing to opera. And then the next thing you know, it's like 90s rock shows up. And so that is where you don't know what to expect next. That is playtime, where it's unstructured and unrule defined as much as possible. So hide and seek is playtime. Yeah, you know, where, yeah, find ways where you can play, but I think I gave you all of mine. So video games is not considered playtime. Do not listen to music when you are in nature. When you are in nature, be with nature. So do one thing at a time, and you will maximize the impact of that one thing. If you want to listen to music, sit down and listen to music. But when you are in nature, be with nature. Be fully with nature with all of your 5 senses. And that will have a deeper impact in your memory as well as in your senses than if you were to be listening to music, but when, you know, sitting on the beach. You can still do that, but I wouldn't make that your only practice. Do one thing at a time. I know this sounds really novel to all of us, but when you're driving, just drive. Don't drive and talk. When you are walking, just walk. Don't walk and talk. But I mean, there's other things that I do. So I do a meditative walk every morning, or I might listen to a podcast, but those things will be scheduled in. But there will be time where I just walk. And I let my mind wander as to whatever is happening, and I will just walk, and I will not listen to anything. So try to do as much as possible, one thing at a time, and that actually is very good for focus. Let's see. I'm still, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna get through all these questions, guys. Shift time, if you are a shift worker, then you really need to get serious about your sleep, because, you know, nighttime work is considered a carcinogenic by the, you know, I think the World Health Organization or the Center for Disease Control in the United States. I can't remember which one. Carcinogenic is actually, carcinogen is actually something that causes cancer. So if you are not managing your sleep properly, you have to be like a sleep ninja in order to do nighttime shift work. And so you really want to make sure that in the day you have dark, you know, you are making it absolutely dark and sleeping as soon as you get home and covering up. And so shifting your circadian rhythms to night to day and day to night. And so the day has to be very, very dark and the night has to be bright. And that's where you're shifting. Most often you want to actually work according to your chronotype, which is basically, there are some people, 25% of the world's population are night owls. They just activate more at nighttime than they do at daytime. The rest of us are actually activated by the sun. The sun triggers the circadian rhythms. The circadian rhythms our focus is affected by that. Our melatonin is affected by that. Our adenosine is affected by that. And so watch my sleep talk, please, for those people. Someone said nutrition plays a big role in our mental health. Absolutely. So there is no such thing as mind-body disconnection, and the stomach is linked to our brain. And so this one is not necessarily put on there because this is just not one of those habits that they put on, but I absolutely 100% agree. And I've done a talk on this where the gut, when we talk about you are what you eat, you literally are what you eat, because there is a nerve connecting the brain, and it's a two-way highway. So the brain is talking to the gut and the gut is talking to the brain. And if your gut bacteria is off, or if you are eating junk, or if you're eating fried foods, or if you're eating foods that are not good for you, guess what else is not good? Your mental health is not good. So absolutely, I will take that feedback, and I will actually add that in the investing time is learning about nutrition, because it was not part of this healthy mind platter that the neuroleadership came up with. So maybe they didn't have neurobiologists or something in there, but 100%, you are what you eat. I answered that question. Routine can be destructive. That's a question. Routine cannot be destructive if you have the ability to adapt and be playful with it. So instead of saying routine, I would like to say that this is a rhythm to my week. This is a rhythm of my week rather than saying routine. So there's a rhythm to your day. Every morning I wake up, I go for a walk, I come back, I take a shower, I get dressed for the day, I check in on my kids, I go to work, I finish work, I close my laptop, I hang out with the kids, I eat dinner, I might watch some Netflix, or in that day I might be reading, or I have my therapy session, and then I go to bed. So there's a rhythm to your day. If one day you're doing this and one day you're doing that, then no, it's not good for you, especially in times where we are full of uncertainty. Routine is the antidote for uncertainty. Routine is the antidote for anxiety. But when you too rigidly hold on to anything, that's when you break. You want to bend with the wind, right? You don't want to break. You actually want to bend with the day. So this is where you want to have this thing scheduled. And I would say the higher up you go or the more you are juggling, you don't want to have too much scheduled in your day. So things pop up in your day. Like I was just dealing with my son's Zoom right before this because I had 30 minutes before this talk. So I'm dealing with that. So not every hour of my day might be chalk or block when it comes to because I am the MD and I'm the mother of 4 children and this is the second week back. So I will schedule a 60-40 or a 70-30. So 30% of it will be scheduled, 70% of it will be left open for me to actually do all the things that I need to get done. So it really is about how you are using your schedule and if you are listening to your own rhythm and your own energy. So no, I don't think routines are destructive. What kind of therapy do you recommend? I recommend therapy based on your goals. So if your goal is to learn about anxiety management or depression management, then I would say CBT is the most evidence-based. But if you want to do insight-oriented work, then I would do psychodynamic therapies or Jungian analysis, which is what I'm engaged in. And so it just depends on what your goals are. If your goals are just to learn more about yourself. So most of the clients that I've worked with in the last 5 years, I would say, are C-suite, senior executives, managing partners, managing directors, CEOs of their companies. And they're just coming in to do their reflective practice as to what kinds of things that they need to be working on. So they're very sort of deep values-driven goals rather than symptom management or anxiety management, even though that might come up from time to time. So it really will actually be dependent on you. Can you recommend a good meditative walk? That's just me listening to binaural beats when I'm doing my walk. So it's just walking and listening to meditation music, and I have all of that on my Instagram, so you guys can follow that. It's in one of my stories. Listening to music would be entertainment, and it does not fall within any of these 7, but guys, you can put these things in the next 7. I actually listen to binaural beats when I am focusing. So you guys might have seen on my Instagram that on Brain FM, I don't know how I can send that with you guys. I can't, but it's actually on my Instagram. Is actually called Brain FM, and Brain FM actually is where you are. Brain FM is where you're listening, and the music is actually creating a sense of focus for you. And so I have a very hyperactive mind, as you might imagine. And so I actually need those beats to keep me sort of entertained. And so I listen to that when I might be meditating or when I'm getting ready to go to sleep, because it uses it uses technology to actually induce states, which I really like. Okay. So the wheel of awareness is on YouTube. Just type in wheel of awareness and it will take you through all of them. And it's a guided meditation. Really recommend it. So someone says, is there a direct link to your sleep tips and where to get some of those accessories that will help? Yes. So if you go on Instagram, all of my sleep stuff is on there, but for a longer talk on sleep, it is on my YouTube. Please, guys, get your sleep in order. I promise you everything else will fall into place. How do you convince a skeptical partner to follow the steps with you? You don't. You make them listen to this talk and then you let it go, because you can only show people the light. You cannot make them walk towards the light. You cannot make them engage with the light. You focus on yourself. You focus on building your muscle. You focus on building your, schedule, and perhaps they might actually, through osmosis, and just because they're inspired by you, actually change their ways. So don't focus on the other person. Take all of that energy, put it back into yourself, and inspire the people in your life. I don't tell my children, go exercise. I just started walking. I got them all a Fitbit. I said, okay, let's do a competition. And then I let it go. And then this is where I might inspire them, but then they started getting in the groove of things, because children will do as you do, not as you say. And I would say same thing with partners and family members. They will sort of be influenced by you eventually, because they will see that you have more energy. They will see that you have a lot more excitement. What I end up doing is I have a walk with my husband every morning, and that's kind of our connecting time. We don't take our tech with us. We talk to each other about the day. We talk to each other about yesterday, and it's our way of connecting with each other too. So maybe you can just find a way to say, hey, let's go for a walk on Kite Beach, or let's go for a walk on the Corniche, etc. And then we can just hang out, but just put your phones away, leave them in the car, and use that time to connect with each other while you're walking. So inspire rather than convince, I would say. Yes, the session will not be up tonight, because it will be up next week. I would say subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Saliha Afridi, and then you get notified when I've actually uploaded that, because they will probably edit the front or the back of this thing, and then you can watch it on there. For parents who don't get enough sleep, I would really say that this is a difficult period in your life, and that you need to maximize whatever you can. Now, I have 4 children, and I did not have a night nurse or any of that stuff with any 4 of them. I was a student. I was getting my doctorate while I was having my 4 children and opening my practice. So I understand what I probably have done to my body. I did burn out 3 times in my life cycle. And that was because I was not listening to my body. But one thing I did do with my babies is that I prioritized sleep, and that was the most important thing. And I did have an understanding husband where he allowed me to do that. So the baby would be in a co-sleeper next to me rather than in a room far away. And then it would just be me sort of rolling over and, either feeding the baby or changing the baby. But it was very much done in a way that was with me maximizing my sleep. I also pulled in all sorts of troops, whether it was my mother, my sister, my nanny, everybody, where I could actually get some sleep and get a rhythm. And as early as possible, I tried to establish a routine for my children, just because I needed a rhythm and they need a rhythm too. And you can usually do that within the 6-week mark, and get a coach, get a consultant where they can actually help you do sleep training and, sort of getting a rhythm. So they might not be sleeping 7 hours a night, but you can start to push some of that out, depending on how you feed them and how you bathe them and how you actually do all of these other things. So for new mothers, or fathers, I would really recommend just getting a consultant and finding a way to do it in the best possible way. Now, your quality of life will decrease in the first year or so, but that's okay, because you're now sacrificing for another, but you can still maximize that period to the best of that period's ability. So don't compare yourself to people who are, single or who have older children. You need to compare yourself to new mothers, and how can you actually maximize that period in your life, or new fathers, I should say too. Do blue light screen protectors work? Yes, they work. And I don't know any ophthalmologists that are against it, but actually I think they are saying that blue light protectors still might put a strain on your eyes. So don't just think that you have a blue light screen protector, so you should just be engaging with more screen time. The blue light screen protector is supposed to help you engage with things in a healthy way, not to have you extend the blue light. Do you see what I'm saying? So it puts less strain on your eye, but that doesn't mean that I should be on my blue light for 5 hours longer. So that's the only reason, but there's no reason why any doctor would be against it, because it's protecting you. It's just people usually use it in the wrong way. So if I schedule time, it actually makes me feel more guilty for not doing other important stuff. That means you probably need to readjust your priorities. And if you're not, you know, readjusting your priorities, then you're probably needing more self-compassion, because when I'm scheduling my work time, I am not with my children. And when I'm scheduling doing nothing time or solitude time, which is something that is absolutely critical for me in order for me to function well, I am not with my children. But I know that when I do all of these things, I am better for my children. But when I'm with my children, I am not doing any of those other things. So it really is about doing all of those things right, doing them deeply, maximizing them, and knowing that it all feeds into each other. So if you're feeling guilty, then you probably need more self-compassion. And I have some posts on that as well. Oh, if the values inventory is no longer on my Instagram, then I will promise you that I will put it back up there. Oh, you're right. Actually, you're right. It's not on there, but it might be on my stories. So I will make sure that it's on there, guys. Just check it out later. I promise you I'll put it on there. So I've answered this question. Stare at a candle. Yes. Social media can be toxic. Yes. The book When is by Daniel Pink, P-I-N-K, like the color. The books are also recommended on my Instagram in my stories. Yes. Thank you for the sweet comments. Badminton is not playtime. No sports are playtime. Let me repeat myself. Anything that has a structured rule is not playtime. Badminton would be considered physical time, not playtime. Playtime is literally spontaneous. Play with Legos, jump on a trampoline, you know, play hide and seek with your children, get a dog, something like that, okay? So can you please recommend or share your weekly tracker template? I swear I made it in Microsoft Word. I started with Sunday through Saturday, and I divided it by 30-minute increments. And that's kind of what I did. I made columns, and I did I made a chart basically, and then I printed out, you know, 1,000 versions of it, and then, or 1,000 pieces of paper. And then I usually plan 4 weeks out, and my executive assistant will tell you that I'm absolutely insane about my schedule, because every hour of my day, every minute of my day, I could be doing something that is feeding my soul, or I could actually, and I actually do plan time for social media too, by the way. Like there are times where I'm like, okay, for 2 hours, I'm going to do nothing but stare at the screen. And that's okay too. But as long as you're scheduling it in and being very conscious about it rather than losing yourself in that time. Yes. So guys, somebody said, how do I keep my motivation up every day? Well, first of all, schedule it into your day. And then I would say, break it down into the tiniest things. So for example, today I did not feel like walking at all this morning. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go for 20 minutes. 20 minutes, the brain lights up. I know the research. And then when I was out there, I was like, well, maybe I'll just do 7,000 steps and then I'll get the rest later. So just give yourself an out where you do the bare minimum of that particular thing. And don't let yourself go 2 days where you haven't done that thing. So you might say, I'm gonna meditate 10 seconds a day, and then you start meditating, and then you lose that momentum, right? You lose, one day you're like, oh, I don't feel like meditating, even though it's like really just focusing on your breath, but you just are like, oh, I don't wanna sit still today. Okay, I'm gonna give myself a pass. I'm not gonna meditate today, but I will focus on my 5 senses, or I will focus on my aroma. I will do something where I'm in a sort of meditative state. But then don't go 2 days without the third day you're starting to meditate again. So this is all of these Jedi tricks that I do with myself, where I actually give myself a, you know, get out of meditation card, or get out of downtime card, or get out of whatever card. Sleep, I will not compromise. Although there are times when I'm like going out with my friends and I know that this thing is going to hang out until, you know, my bedtime is like 10 p.m., 10:30 max. But there are times where I say, you know what? I'm going to compromise my sleep for my social connection. And then we stay up till 12:30 or 1. And then I make sure that I make up for that. But it will not extend more than a day. It will not happen night after night after night, which is what people are doing, which is insane, actually. And so you want to schedule these things in, and you want to find a way where you don't go more than 2 days with you being in that schedule. So somebody says, sharing my issues may divide my stress, but people call it spreading negative energy. Now, I'm not saying that I sit there and complain about my life. I think this is not about spreading negative energy. This is about sharing your life with another person and sharing your stressors with another person, but also saying, I take accountability for this. I think it becomes complaining when I tell you, oh my God, my, you know, nanny did this, or my, you know, husband did that, and my husband did that, and my husband did that, and my husband did that. And every single day I come to you with my husband did that. Like, no. What are you doing about that in order to make that better? How are you engaging with your husband differently? Or how are you engaging in therapy? Or how are you engaging in learning together where you are taking some accountability? The weight becomes too heavy for other people when you are not carrying any of that alone. Right? So you have to take personal responsibility and personal accountability for your life. If you are counting on other people to fix your life, or if you're saying, oh, somebody carry this for me, I don't want to do it, then it becomes heavy. Then it becomes negative energy. It's not negative energy if you are sharing, hey, listen, Susan, you know, BFF, like this just happened today and I feel really bad about it, and I thought about this and I thought about that, and I take some ownership of that, and she just listens, and then you don't do it every single day for the next many months. So, and there might be periods in your life where you might be doing that, and there might be people who have more capacity for that, but it becomes heavy when you don't take personal accountability, when you don't take personal responsibility. All right, guys, I have another call that I need to get on. And so any questions that I didn't answer, please make sure you direct message me on my Instagram, and I promise you that I will get back to you within the next few days. I have accounted for that time. So thank you all for being here, and I will put the values inventory and everything else that I recommended on my Instagram stories, and I look forward to seeing all of you again soon. Okay, take care, guys. Bye.